Hi, my name is Luke from Yoda Games, and I recently had a conversation with David McCann, who is the CEO of Mammoth Games. They make hyper-casual games. They're based in Australia. And we talked about quite a few things, including how to build out and balance a game economy, how to run a studio and maintain creativity and the business side at the same time. David had a lot of very interesting insights, and I think you'll get a lot from it. I certainly did. So, I hope you enjoy the conversation. David, it's great to have you here. Thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks, Luke.
Maybe the best thing to do just to kick it off would be to have you give me a little bit of backstory, a bit of background on yourself and how you started your studio.
So I've been kicking around the indie game scene in Adelaide for the last 7 years or so.
Mhm.
And then my original studio that I put together, it fell apart over the course of 4 years. So I sort of took a bit of time. I joined the Australian Defence Force for a little while as a reservist. And I changed the way I wanted to approach game development effectively. I joined the Academy of Interactive Entertainment and started working on my trade skills as a game designer. And through that process, in the third year, you build a company. So that's how Mini Mammoth Games came to exist. I put together a team of 8 individuals, myself included, and we created Mini Mammoth Games to make fun little games. So the business serves 2 purposes. Obviously, we want it to be financially successful, but even if it's not, it's pushing our professional capacity and making us better at our work.
Sure. Well, before we get into Mini Mammoth Games, which I want to spend most of our time on, was there anything that you learned from the initial failure that you took away that kind of got rolled into the next thing?
Yeah, so one of the things that became really apparent the first time through, obviously, it was one of those you just sort of start working on the thing and you work it out as you go along
Yeah.
situations. I put together like a bunch of programmers and artists who needed professional work as well and just sort of hoped that it all went well. But our intent never really aligned with that sort of stuff. And so what I realized from that was it was really important to focus firstly obviously on your trade skills, but it was really important to build partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
Build partnerships with organizations, build partnerships with people, and use that to propel yourself professionally and your business. So as a result, that's why I'm enrolled with the Academy of Interactive Entertainment, because I knew they had a inclusive business course at the end of it and a incubator to support companies like Mini Mammoth Games.
Well, I mean, in general, Australia has the reputation of having a thriving indie gaming community, right? So, is it just a matter of finding the right door to get in? Is one incubator as good as the next? Or if someone was going to do that, let's say they're in Australia, where would they start?
I think it's what you make of it. So
Mm-hmm.
with the incubator support through the academy, they're really good. They're attentive, but they're obviously very busy. So you've got to be chasing after the things you need from them and
Right.
saying, "Hi, here I am. Please pay attention to me." And
Hustlers
I
win.
imagine that's much the same with all of those organizations.
Sure.
Um, yeah.
To the hustlers go the spoils, I suppose. So maybe we can focus on Mini Mammoth Games, the current one, the one you're doing now. What are the things, the games that have been most interesting to work on, most challenging? And I am also curious to know how you decide what game to make.
So yeah, at the moment we're focused entirely on hypercasual games. Which means they've got a very quick turnaround. So one of the things I find most satisfying about that is we make the game and then we move on to the next game. So I get to put it down and stop having to think about it. Um, the games that are dearest to my heart, I'm currently working on one called Cyberclimb, and I'm having a lot of fun with that.
Mhm.
But previously, Bundle Rush was a really fun experiment professionally for me because I'm not used to working with puzzle games. My place where I normally work is mechanics and how the game feels. And so building a puzzle game that appeals to people that like I don't play puzzle games was like an exciting and fresh experience for me. So
So you found something coming into it with fresh eyes that maybe someone who's been living with puzzle games or playing puzzle games their whole lives maybe wouldn't have seen?
I certainly hope so.
Yeah,
It released fully like 3 weeks ago, so
cool.
we're still building that player base to discover.
Well, what is the basis for you? Is it sort of like trying to find a market fit, or is this is exciting, I want to work on this? How do you come to the right thing to do next?
Yeah, Mini Mammoth Games. Our approach with hypercasuals, we know there's different ways that developers enter into this market. One of them is chasing trends effectively,
Hmm.
and we've worked with some publishers that really want that from us. But we're only a small team, and we found that if we're going to make this work, it's better to be the guy who sets the trend because then you're not chasing after everyone else's heels. So our intent with our products is find something, maybe it's a new twist on an old genre, or maybe it's like a fun aesthetic, something that differentiates it from the other stuff rather than chasing after other people's products and their success. We hope that works out for us.
So far, so good, right?
Yeah.
Does that also include buy-in from your team, like going around and saying, are you interested in this? Do you like this? Is this cool? Is that part of it as well? I would imagine so.
Yeah, it is. And we also source ideas. So, like, you start with that one hook and then you build on it with the other members of your team. So, particularly like once an MVP is built, we then just have every member of Mini Mammoth Games work their way through post release in addition to working on projects. So, they generally get their hands on it at some point and have input about how this should work and stuff like that. We're streamlining processes to get that input earlier, but it's a iterative process.
Well, so speaking of that kind of iterative process and also the collaborative process, you talked about making connections, but as a person running a studio right now, uh, imagine talking to someone who's just starting to do that, or someone who wants to build their own studio but is just starting. Besides that valuable point that you had earlier, what would be another thing or a couple other things that would be maybe painful lessons learned, or yeah, don't don't miss out on this thing. You have to do this if you're starting your own studio. What would some of those things be?
It's funny, I'm giving a talk about this today to a
Oh,
class.
practice. Here we go.
Yeah. So there's a number of different things my team wish they could go back and tell themselves about a person who's starting a business. One is obviously maintain your trade skills. Particularly artists find that's really important. I think that there's a lot of skill loss if they're not hands on the tools regularly,
Yep.
and you need to balance that need against the stuff you need to do for your business. Um, Another one is like focus what you're doing with your finances. Like you're about to be financially tied to a business, and you can't afford to spend your money on things that might not work out for you long term personally, and then discover, oh, the business has this unexpected cost and I'm out of pocket and I can't support it and I need to find some other way to get the money happening.
Right.
um, I think certainly because my team is composed of much younger developers. Like I'm in my 30s, but everyone else is in their early 20s or mid 20s. So they're learning these lessons first time on. Um,
Is that better, do you
what
think?
else?
Is it better to work with people in their 20s? Is there a freshness, or is there a trade-off there with experience? If they're around you right now, just blink twice.
I am in the office, but I mean, personally, they're an incredible bunch of professionals.
Yeah.
They're so young and they still take their job really seriously. And I'm really proud of the work we do
Yeah.
together and of working with them. So, like, I couldn't really tell you whether it's better to work with young people versus old. Um,
Well, you're
I
not
think
old.
that's true. There's certainly a lived experience difference,
Sure.
but I think
Sure.
if they take themselves seriously and they work hard, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day for me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's great advice. And I wonder also about, so you talked about the business side and about, well, making games. I think some people get into it with the idea of making games because that's what they like. They like making games, or they like games and they want to make games. But then don't immediately think about the business side of it, that it has to be a business. And so that's where sort of monetization of the game comes in, right? So a lot of the people who watch these videos are curious about that side of it. What is the right way to develop the right strategy for each game? And that includes, the IAPs versus ads, or the experience of too many ads, things like that.
So as a designer, when I'm thinking about a product we're building, I do want to think about how I can involve in-app purchases, interstitial ads, and banner ads. But that's because the nature of the games we're making are like, they're short. You put them out in a month. You expect players to pick them up, play with them for a week or two, and then they'll be done with them, right? That monetization strategy isn't appropriate for something like, say, our flagship project we're working currently to build is called the Ereptius Hotel. It's a narrative game. And the intent behind that is we'll spend much longer on building it. It's sort of running in the background. That game, it wouldn't be appropriate to put adverts at every break in that game, because it is an existential horror experience. We expect people to like curl up with their tablet in bed with their headphones on at night and be playing it. And if it suddenly gets interrupted with like the new Lords ad or something, that's really going to break
For sure.
the whole experience for them.
But how do you figure out that that's the reality? I mean, it makes sense with hyper casual. You want to, people accept breaks because they're, you're dying or you're losing lives, and people are usually okay with, rewarded video ads and things like that. But how do you figure that out? How did you learn that?
It's literally when you're putting together the game, like as a designer, at least the gameplay loop tells you. So, like a hyper casual game has a really short, fast gameplay loop. And it's like, okay, well, this is optimal for putting interstitials in because I expect the players to have a break every 45 seconds to a minute. And if they find that frustrating, we give them an in-app purchase to get rid of those ads so that they still have their breaks in the gameplay, but it's not ad filled or what have you, because every player is different. But like Ereptius, when you look at the gameplay loop for that kind of game, it's a narrative game. We expect the players to play for like 5 or 10 minutes before there's any like break in the build of the atmosphere and that sort of thing. So an interstitial ad, which traditionally interstitial ads are not overly profitable if you don't get them in every 45 seconds to about a minute and a half. So like looking at the gameplay loop, you can tell that's not going to work. This product is clearly going to be a premium product, and instead we'll sell chapters. So then we don't interrupt their gameplay until it's an appropriate part in the story. And we go, hey, the next chapter is $5 or what have you. And that's how we monetize that kind of product. Alternatively, obviously, if you're selling in Steam, if you're looking to make like a big game, you're obviously looking for premium purchase. Those price points are a bit messier because one of the things that really messes around with monetization strategy is the way publishers interact with it, because they have a lot more money. And so the way they're doing their math is very different. So an indie game developer who goes on the Steam might be like, okay, I've spent a year and a half working on this, but it's just me. I have to make back like maybe $100,000. So I'll sell it for $60. Done. Publisher rocks up and goes, well, you've spent $50,000 making the game, but we're going to spend $2 million marketing the game. So now you need to sell it for more because we don't expect you to sell it unless you sell this many. So that's a different kettle of fish, effectively.
Now, okay, so but back to the balance. I'm curious about the balance, especially for the upcoming game. So if you have chapters that people can unlock, are there multiple paths to that? Like younger players without money can do rewarded, maybe rewarded ads, and then other people, maybe older players, will buy the next chapter as an IAP.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to balance it. It's definitely being designed as a premium product that we're going to allow players to get into with the first two chapters for
Yeah.
free. But you're right, like some younger players and certain countries don't generally engage with a financial purchase.
Oh, their
So I think we'll
parents
have
that have the the leash.
to. That's right. So we'll have to balance it. I think reward ads might be a good answer, but I don't know how many a player would need to watch to be able to buy a chapter. So that's a more complicated discussion we'll have once we've got an MVP build, I think.
Do you have a release date on that one so that I know when to check?
Uh, no, we don't at the moment. The trick with the flagships is it's running in the background and
Right.
we're trying to focus on the other work. So at the moment, I think we're investigating a Kickstarter.
That's a cool way to do it. Get some buzz going. Yeah. Yeah, that's a
Exactly.
great
So
idea.
we're aiming for, I believe, August, September with that. Should be able to hear about the Ereptius Hotel from Mini Mammoth Games then.
You said it's a horror game.
Yeah, existential horror, particularly for
Existential
tablets and that
horror.
sort of
Okay.
thing.
What's the difference between regular horror and existential horror?
Regular horror often relies on gore.
Okay.
Existential horror relies on the circumstance.
Makes you think about your life. Yeah. All right, fair enough. Well, you've been working with the Yoda One team on Maz. How's your experience been with that to date?
Really positive. They're really responsive when we need assistance. They overall, we would prefer always to work with Yoda One if we can get away with it. Their team has been so approachable about problems we might have had and really responsive if we've got feedback or something else for them about Mass. Implementing their, out of all of the ad mediation platforms we've been engaged with, and I think we're up to like 4 now,
Jeez.
Mass is 100% the easiest to implement.
That's great to hear. Now, you talked about at the beginning that you wanted to brush up on your trade skills. I'm kind of just curious as a point of interest. Is that something that has completely faded for you now that you're kind of out of it, or do you stay fresh? Do you keep learning in the same way that an artist would?
I you've got to keep your hands on the tools.
Right.
Like
So
I
even as the leader of the studio, you feel like you have to stay pretty close. That's
yeah,
interesting.
like my work as a CEO means I spend a lot of my time doing outreach and interviews and this sort of thing. But when I'm not doing this stuff, I've still got an hour or two where I can work on some kind of project. And those skills mean, one, I'm still familiar with the work I'm doing. I'm not a
Yeah.
programmer, I'm a designer. So it means I can have conversations about gameplay loops and that sort of thing.
Right.
But two, it's also like we got into the business to make fun toys for people. Ideally we get to keep doing that, or else why would you want to speak to me? I'm clearly not invested in the business itself, right?
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, so you feel like for you the creativity is still there? Because I've talked to some other people who have said, yeah, I like running a business, but the creative part it's kind of drained away over the years for me. Do you still go into the office and feel uh, excited about the creative aspect of building games?
um I don't know about like different professions and stuff, but at least as a game designer, like our job is driven by our creativity, so you
Right.
learn to develop in the same way that like a person who exercises gets tougher muscles. You learn to make your creativity more resilient, and when you need to switch off to recharge and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
that's just part of the trade skill. Basically, got
Yeah.
to keep your creativity going.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because there are other professions or things that someone might do that involve creativity that it's not the central component of that. But for gaming, it's the center. It's the centerpiece of the whole enterprise. Yeah, that's an interesting point. Well, last question. What you talked about the upcoming game, but what now are you most excited about working on that you're working on now? Maybe personal work or company wide. What are you most excited about?
Right now, the thing
Well,
I'm most
or on the horizon, maybe something
yeah.
coming up. Like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe you're building an AR game or something. I don't know.
Well, yeah. So right now I'm working on a hypercasual game. I mentioned it earlier, Cyberclimb, and
Yeah.
it's a one mechanic platformer.
Mm.
It's similar in idea, though I didn't know this at the time, to Super Mario Run.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, so it's just a lot of fun to work on that game. Like thinking about how to put the levels together so the player can get through them, even though the only way they interact with the game is tapping on the screen, and you still got to do all the things a platformer normally does. It's a lot of fun to work on.
So the mechanic is it's like Super Mario Run. He's always running, and you're just trying to
Exactly.
figure out. Okay, that's pretty cool. Yeah, that's a fun game. If it's like that,
And
that's
then
cool.
it's all about like climbing through cities and stuff.
Hmm.
So whereas Super Mario is all like Mario gameplay, but we're like this is a climbing game. So you're doing wall jumps and sliding down walls and like
Right. Parkour.
clambering across robots to get through the map
Yeah.
and stuff like that. That's great.
Yeah. That's very cool. Well, those are the questions I have. If there's anything that you want to promote or talk about or mention or let people know about, uh, the floor is yours. And otherwise, I really appreciate your time today.
No worries. So I've mentioned Cyberclimb and Ereptius, but we actually recently released Bundle Rush.
Yep.
I'd love to get people into that game. Like,
Okay.
I think it's an amazing little game you can spend some time with. It's come with the gallery update, so you collect these cute little bundles as you go through the level, and you can present them and share that on Facebook and show your friends and family. And it's really family friendly. So I'd love to see people getting into that.
It's a very eye-catching title for a game as well. The word Bundamal. I have no idea what that means exactly, but it's
It's a
such a
bundle
catchy.
animal.
It's such a catchy word. I really like it. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your time and your insights, and I'm sure everyone who watches this will as well. So thanks again. I really appreciate it, and it's been great speaking with you.
No worries. Thank you very much.